I remember the day Chloe came over, her face alight with an almost manic excitement. She brought Marcus with her, a man whose expensive suit looked distinctly out of place in my small, somewhat cluttered living room. He offered me a brief condescending nod, his gaze already drifting towards the chipped paint on my windowsill. I knew then that whatever they were about to say, it wasn't going to be good for me. My daughter, Chloe, barely sat down before she launched into it. "Mom, great news! Marcus and I are moving to Europe." She clapped her hands together, a gesture I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. The news hit me like a physical blow. Europe? I'd barely left this neighborhood in decades. Then came the second punch, delivered with a casualness that chilled me to the bone. "We're going to Paris for a temporary business opportunity. And we need you to watch Leo for a while." Leo, my sweet, 8-month-old grandson, was gurgling happily in his playpen in the corner, oblivious to the earthquake his mother was causing in my life. Chloe and Marcus wove an elaborate tale of sudden, unexpected corporate expansion, a unique project, and an urgent need for their combined expertise overseas. It was all about networking, building a foundation, and securing their future. They spoke of stylish Parisian apartments and future luxuries, their eyes sparkling with a vision that clearly didn't include the reality of my struggling life. "It's just for 6 months, Mom," Chloe insisted, her voice taking on that saccharine sweet tone she reserved for when she wanted something big. "We'll get settled, get everything set up, and then we'll send for Leo, we promise." Marcus echoed her words, though his gaze was still fixed on some imagined horizon beyond my dusty curtains. They painted a picture of a glamorous, temporary separation, a brief inconvenience before a grand reunion in a beautiful new city. But my heart sank, recognizing the familiar pattern of Chloe's promises, often as fleeting as morning mist. I tried to interject, to voice the anxieties already swirling in my gut. "Chloe, you know my situation," I began, my voice a little hoarse. "I'm working 2 jobs just to keep up with bills. My arthritis has been acting up something fierce lately, especially in my hands. And with rent going up, I don't know if I can manage." My fingers, gnarled and stiff from years of cleaning offices and serving food, ached in silent protest. I pictured the stacks of unopened envelopes on my kitchen counter, each one a fresh demand for money I didn't have. Chloe waved a dismissive hand, a gesture that cut deeper than any harsh word. "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. You raised me just fine, didn't you? And Leo's an easy baby. He barely cries, sleeps through the night." Her words felt like a slap. An easy baby. As if that negated the round-the-clock responsibility, the endless cycle of feeding, changing, soothing. As if my age, my ailments, and my empty pockets were suddenly irrelevant. It was a familiar dismissal, a lifetime of my needs being secondary to hers. But then I looked at Leo. He had somehow wriggled out of his playpen and was now pulling himself up on my worn armchair, his bright blue eyes fixed on me. He giggled, reaching out a tiny, chubby hand, his smile utterly pure and trusting. In that moment, all my rational fears, all my protests, seemed to melt away. How could I say no to those eyes? How could I turn away from this innocent life that needed protection? "All right," I heard myself say, the word a heavy stone, dropping into a well of uncertainty. "But you have to call me. Every day. I need to know you're all right. And I need you to check in on your son." It was a flimsy condition, a desperate attempt to maintain some connection, some semblance of responsibility from her. Chloe hugged me tightly, a brief, perfumed embrace, and for a fleeting moment, I almost believed her. They left 2 days later, a whirlwind of last-minute packing and hurried goodbyes. Leo was placed gently into my arms, his small weight feeling both precious and overwhelmingly heavy. "The first week," Chloe called, just as she promised. Short conversations, full of excitement about Paris, questions about Leo's sleeping and eating. Then the calls became sporadic. Every other day, then every few days, then a week went by. My phone, a cheap flip model, lay silent on the counter, a constant reminder of the growing void. The mounting expenses, initially a nagging concern, now became a suffocating reality. Formula, diapers, Baby food. The costs spiraled, eating away at my meager earnings, leaving less and less for my own survival. The worst came at the grocery store. I stood in the baby aisle, a familiar blue canister of formula in my hand. My basket held nothing else, just that and a small box of instant oatmeal for myself. I walked to the checkout, trying to keep my face neutral, hoping the cashier wouldn't notice the tremor in my hands. "That'll be $18.45, the young woman said cheerfully. My heart sank. I knew, with a terrible certainty, that I only had $12 in my wallet. My hand fumbled, pulling out the crumpled bills, a collection of ones and fives. It wasn't enough. The heat rushed to my face, a blush of shame and despair. I could feel tears pricking behind my eyes, blurring the bright lights of the store. The crushing weight of my situation, the complete and utter inadequacy, pressed down on me. A gentle voice beside me broke through the haze. "Are you all right, dear?" It was Olivia, one of the store employees, a kind-faced woman who often helped me find things. She saw the formula, the few dollars, the unspoken desperation in my eyes. She didn't press, didn't offer pity, just a quiet understanding. I shook my head, unable to speak, and forced a weak smile. I'll just put this back," I mumbled, my voice barely a whisper. I left the store empty-handed, the weight of the unpaid formula heavier than any groceries could have been. As soon as I was home, Leo now fussing with hunger, I called Chloe again. Ring, ring, ring. Straight to voicemail. Her cheerful, distant voice echoed from my phone, talking about unable to answer right now and leaving a message. I didn't leave a message. What was there to say? My last coherent thought was that I had only a small amount of formula left, enough for maybe one more watered-down feeding. That night, with Leo fed with diluted milk, his hungry cries eventually subsiding into a restless sleep, I knew I had reached my limit. My pride, a stubborn companion through decades of hardship, had to go. I had to ask for help. I thought of Mrs. Kim, my neighbor across the hall, a woman whose quiet generosity I had always admired but never relied upon. Swallowing a lump in my throat, I resolved to knock on her door tomorrow morning and ask for $40. The next morning, after a restless night filled with the quiet pangs of a hungry baby and the gnawing ache of my own desperation, I knew what I had to do. My pride felt like a lead weight in my stomach, but Leo's soft whimper from his crib was a far stronger motivator. With trembling, arthritic fingers, I pulled out my old flip phone. I scrolled through my sparse contact list, past Chloe's name, which I now felt a pang of resentment towards, until I found Mrs. Kim. My thumb hovered over the message icon. The words formed slowly in my mind, each one a fresh wave of humiliation. "Mrs. Kim, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm in a desperate situation. Could you possibly lend me $40 for formula? I promise to pay you back as soon as I can." It felt like an admission of absolute failure. Here I was, 63 years old, having raised a child, having worked tirelessly my entire life, reduced to begging for $40 to feed my grandson. The shame was a bitter taste in my mouth, but Leo's small, hungry cries were louder. With a deep breath, I pressed send. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed with a reply. I braced myself for Mrs. Kim's kindly, perhaps pitying, response. But the message that appeared on my screen was entirely unexpected. "You are a warrior woman." The words were stark, unusual, and definitely not something Mrs. Kim would ever say. My brow furrowed in confusion. Had I sent it to the wrong person? Before I could ponder it further, another notification flashed across my screen, this time from my banking app. It was usually only automated alerts for meager deposits from my paychecks. But this was different. Deposit $10,000. My breath hitched. $10,000. My eyes must be playing tricks on me. My vision, already a little blurry without my reading glasses, seemed to waver. I closed the app, rubbed my eyes, and reopened it. The sum remained. A clean, crisp $10,000 sitting in my almost empty savings account. A cold wave of panic washed over me, chilling me to the bone despite the sudden influx of imagined wealth. This was wrong. This couldn't be real. I had clearly made a mistake. I checked the number I had sent the text to. It wasn't Mrs. Kim's. It was an unfamiliar number, one I didn't recognize at all. Oh God, I had sent a desperate, humiliating plea for money to a complete stranger. My mind raced, conjuring images of scams, phishing attempts, and hidden strings that would surely yank me into deeper trouble. This was too good to be true, and in my experience, anything too good to be true always came with a hefty price tag. My fingers, still trembling, dialed the mysterious number. It rang several times before going to voicemail. "Hello," I stammered, my voice cracking with anxiety. "My name is Eleanor. I think I made a mistake. I sent you a text message asking for money, and then I received a large deposit. I don't know who you are, but I didn't mean to send it to you. Please, if this is a mistake or some kind of scam, please call me back. I just don't understand." I left my number, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I spent the next hour on the phone with my bank, a frustrating loop of automated menus and long hold times. When I finally reached a human, they confirmed it. A legitimate wire transfer had indeed been made to my account. Clean, no flags, no suspicious origins that they could trace or share. "We cannot disclose the sender's information, ma'am," the polite but firm voice explained. "It's a private transaction. You should speak with the sender directly." But how could I, when I didn't even know who they were? That night, lying awake next to Leo's crib, the baby finally fed with the last of the diluted formula, my mind was a whirlwind. Fear still gnawed at me, a constant whisper of too good to be true, but beneath it, a fragile tendril of hope began to unfurl. $10,000. It wasn't just $40 for formula. It was enough to buy a month's worth of proper, nutritious formula, enough to pay off my overdue rent and avoid eviction, enough to finally buy the expensive medication my arthritis specialist had recommended but which I could never afford. It was a lifeline, flung from an unknown source, into the murky waters of my desperation. The next morning, as if orchestrated by some unseen hand, a delivery truck pulled up outside my building. The driver, a burly man with a surprisingly gentle smile, carried a large, elegantly wrapped box to my door. "Eleanor Vance?" he asked, checking his manifest. I nodded, my curiosity piqued. I hadn't ordered anything. The box, surprisingly heavy, was addressed directly to me. Inside, nestled amongst layers of tissue paper, was a collection of the most beautiful baby clothes I had ever seen. Tiny jumpsuits made of the softest cotton, a miniature cashmere sweater, even a pair of little leather booties. These weren't the cheap, mass-produced outfits I bought from the discount store. These were designer pieces, impossibly expensive, impossibly luxurious. Beneath them, I found several large canisters of the highest-end organic formula, the kind I had only ever dreamed of affording. And then, at the bottom, a small, cream-colored card, tucked into a pristine envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. The words, handwritten in an elegant, flowing script, were chilling. "For the warrior who fights alone, you are seen. You are valued. Do not look for me." I dropped the card as if it had burned me, a gasp escaping my lips. My heart hammered against my ribs, a sudden, cold terror gripping me. Someone knew about my struggles, my quiet despair, my humiliating plea for $40. Someone had been watching me. The anonymity, which had initially felt like a shield, now felt like a threat. Was this a good Samaritan? Or something far more sinister? But then I looked at Leo, sleeping peacefully in his crib, his little chest rising and falling with innocent regularity. He deserved better than watered-down formula and threadbare clothes. He deserved the best. And here it was, laid out before me, a bounty I could never have provided on my own. Despite the fear, despite the chilling implications of the note, I knew I couldn't deny this help. It was for Leo. It provided what I, in my endless struggle, could not. The mystery remained. But the necessity was clear. The initial shock of the $10,000 deposit and the mysterious box slowly gave way to a new, unsettling routine. The packages continued to arrive with a surprising regularity. First, a set of brightly colored educational toys, far more sophisticated than anything I could have chosen or afforded. Then, a weekly delivery of organic baby food, exotic purees, and tiny gourmet meals that made my own humble dinners feel rather inadequate. The most striking gift arrived one afternoon. A sleek, high-end stroller, its polished chrome gleaming in the sunlight, with suspension so smooth it made Leo look like he was floating. It was the kind of stroller I'd seen glossy young mothers push through upscale neighborhoods, certainly not something meant for the cracked sidewalks of my street. Each delivery came with another small, cream-colored card, the elegant script, now a familiar, unnerving sight. The messages continued their cryptic, almost poetic nature. For the warrior's little prince, one read, tucked inside a package of miniature designer jeans. Another, accompanying the opulent stroller, declared, "Every battle deserves the best armor." They were affirmations, yes, but also a constant, chilling reminder that I was being watched. My life an open book to some anonymous benefactor. Naturally, the sudden influx of luxury items didn't go unnoticed in our close-knit, observant community. Whispers started, subtle at first, then growing louder, more direct. Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor with an uncanny ability to know everyone's business, cornered me one afternoon while I was bringing in groceries. She eyed the organic kale puree in my bag. "Eleanor, dear," she began, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "You're certainly doing well for yourself these days. All that fancy stuff for Leo, that gorgeous stroller? Where are you getting all that, if you don't mind my asking?" Her eyes, sharp and inquisitive, openly wondered if I had suddenly come into money, or worse, if I was involved in something illicit. The truth, that a complete stranger was funding my grandson's well-being, felt too bizarre, too unbelievable to share. So I mumbled something vague about a little help and hurried away. At the park, where I tried to give Leo some fresh air, the comments were even more pointed. Other mothers, younger and more affluent, would gaze at Leo nestled in his state-of-the-art stroller, then glance at my worn clothes and tired face. "Oh, what a lovely stroller," one gushed, her voice edged with envy. "Looks like someone's got some serious family money." Another chimed in. "Lucky baby, getting such expensive things. Must be nice to have a generous family." The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. My family had, in essence, abandoned me, leaving me to sink or swim with a baby in tow, while a complete stranger, a shadow in the periphery, was providing for Leo with a generosity I could never have imagined. The growing unease prompted me to try Chloe again. After countless unanswered calls, I finally caught her. Her voice, when she answered, was bright and airy, tinged with the unmistakable sounds of laughter and distant, unfamiliar music. "Mom, so good to hear from you," she exclaimed, as if I was the one who had disappeared. The sheer casualness of her greeting, after weeks of silence, stung. "Chloe," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." "Seriously," she sighed, a slight irritation seeping into her tone. "Oh, Mom, always so serious. Everything's amazing here. Paris is just divine." "Marcus's assignment, by the way, it's actually permanent. We're making Paris our home base. Isn't that wonderful?" The words hit me like a revelation, cold and stark. Permanent, home base. My heart sank. The 6-month temporary arrangement was a lie, a flimsy excuse to unload her son onto me indefinitely. A wave of anger, hot and unexpected, surged through me. "Permanent?" I repeated, my voice rising a little. "Chloe, what about Leo?" "You said 6 months. You said you'd send for him," she scoffed, a brittle sound that grated on my nerves. "Mom, don't be ridiculous. You're doing such a wonderful job. Honestly, it's been such a blessing. You were always so worried about me being a young mother, weren't you? Always saying I wasn't ready. Well, here's your chance to do it your way, properly." She twisted my past anxieties, my legitimate concerns about her early motherhood, into a weapon, implying that this whole arrangement was somehow fulfilling my own hidden desires, that I was secretly delighted to raise her son. The audacity took my breath away. I swallowed my anger, focusing on the immediate need. Chloe, I can't keep doing this alone. I need help, financially. I need money for Leo's care. Formula, diapers, everything costs a fortune. There was a pause, a moment of awkward silence filled with the faint Parisian music. Oh, Mom. Of course. We're just a little stretched right now, setting up the new apartment and everything. But next month, for sure, we'll send something significant, I promise. The familiar next month excuse. It was the same line she'd used throughout her teenage years, promising to clean her room next month, promising to pay me back next month. I knew, with a heavy certainty, that next month would never come. After the call, I held Leo close, inhaling the sweet scent of his baby skin. He nestled into my shoulder, his small hand gripping my blouse. In that moment, the sting of his formal abandonment settled deep in my bones. It wasn't just Chloe's irresponsibility anymore. It was a conscious decision to relinquish her parental duties, wrapped in a thin veneer of temporary arrangement. Later that evening, as dusk settled over our quiet street, a new kind of fear crept in. I was rocking Leo to sleep when I glanced out the window. A sleek, black sedan, the kind with tinted windows, was parked directly across the street from my house. It sat there, motor off, for a full hour. No one got in, no one got out. It just watched. My heart pounded. Was this my mysterious benefactor? Or something far more sinister? The next day, still shaken, I called the non-emergency police line. I tried to explain, stumbling over my words, about the anonymous gifts, the strange notes, the unsettling warrior woman text, and now, the black car. The officer on the other end of the line was polite but clearly skeptical. "Ma'am," he said, a note of weariness in his voice. "So you're saying someone is sending you baby supplies, giving you money, and potentially has a secret admirer situation? And you're concerned about a car parked on a public street?" He assured me they'd keep an eye out, but the dismissive tone made it clear he thought I was an elderly woman imagining things. That night, I double-checked every lock on every door and window, pulling the curtains tightly shut, trying to block out the unseen eyes. Leo, sensing my heightened anxiety, was unusually fussy, crying intermittently throughout the night. I held him close, wishing for answers, wishing for safety, wishing the chilling generosity would simply stop. The morning after the unsettling presence of the black sedan and my dismissed police report, a new package arrived. This one was different. It wasn't a large box of baby supplies or designer clothes. It was small, discreet, wrapped in plain brown paper. My hands, still feeling the residual tension from the previous night, fumbled as I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a delicate silver locket. It was beautifully crafted, antique-looking, with intricate scrollwork on its surface. My fingers traced the cool metal, a strange sense of foreboding settling over me. What could this possibly mean? I clicked it open, my breath catching in my throat. Inside the locket, perfectly sized, was a tiny photograph. It was a picture of Leo and me. We were at the park, sitting on a bench near the playground, just a few days ago. Leo was in his expensive new stroller, gurgling with delight, his head thrown back in a fit of pure baby laughter. And I was there too, my face etched with a rare, genuine smile, my own head tilted back as I laughed along with him. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, one of the few truly carefree moments I'd had since Chloe left. A moment I cherished, but the joy quickly turned to ice in my veins. I had no memory of that photograph being taken. No one had asked my permission. No one had even been near enough with a camera to capture such an intimate, unguarded moment. My hands began to shake uncontrollably, the locket clattering against my palm. Someone had been there, hidden, watching us, intimately observing my life, capturing my most private moments without my knowledge or consent. It was an invasion, a violation. The accompanying note, scrawled on another cream-colored card, only solidified my terror. Every warrior needs a talisman, it read, the elegant script now feeling sinister. You are not as alone as you think. The words, intended perhaps as comfort, instead sounded like a warning, or a threat. My first instinct was to call 911 again, to report this escalation, but then I imagined the conversation. Hello, officer? Yes. The person who sent me $10,000 and countless luxury baby items is now sending me a locket with a picture of me and my grandson, which they took without my permission, and they said I'm a warrior woman. I feel threatened by their generosity. The absurdity of it hit me hard. They would think I was losing my mind, a paranoid old woman making up fantasies. I was already dismissed once. Who would believe me? So instead of dialing, I dropped to my knees beside Leo's crib, my face buried in my hands. I prayed. I prayed for understanding. I prayed for safety. I prayed for protection for Leo, this innocent child who was unknowingly caught in the center of this unfolding mystery. Please, I whispered, just tell me what this is. Tell me who you are. As if in direct answer to my silent plea, my old flip phone buzzed. It was a text message from the mysterious number, the one I had sent my desperate request to, the one that had initiated this entire unsettling saga. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The message was chillingly precise. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Riverside Park. Bench by the duck pond. Come alone with Leo. It's time you knew the truth. My blood ran cold. Riverside Park, the duck pond. That was our spot, our routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, weather permitting, I took Leo to that exact bench. This person didn't just know about me. They knew my schedule, my habits, my most mundane activities. This wasn't a random act of kindness. It was a meticulously planned operation. They had been watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal themselves. I looked at Leo, sleeping soundly in his crib, his small face peaceful and innocent. He was utterly unaware that he was a pawn in this stranger's intricate game. He was the reason I was here, the reason I was enduring this unnerving surveillance, the reason I felt compelled to follow this terrifying directive. He was at the center of it all. Fear, raw and primal, battled with a desperate, gnawing need for answers. Who was this person? What did they want? What truth did they intend to reveal? My mind raced through every possible scenario, each one more alarming than the last. Blackmail? A cult? Someone with a disturbing obsession? The possibilities were endless, and each one filled me with dread. I barely slept that night, every shadow in my room seeming to hold a hidden observer, every creak of the old house a potential intruder. By morning, after another sleepless night spent oscillating between terror and a fierce resolve, I almost decided against going. The police wouldn't help. I had no one to turn to. Maybe it was safer to just ignore it, to try and disappear. But then I looked at Leo, awake and babbling, his bright eyes full of life and curiosity. Living in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder, was no way to raise this child. He deserved a stable, secure environment, and for that, I needed to know the truth. I needed to unmask this shadow, to understand their intentions, to finally put an end to this unnerving generosity. With a heavy heart and a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach, I gathered Leo's diaper bag. I checked the time on my old flip phone, the seconds ticking by with agonizing slowness. 10 a.m. 5 hours until the meeting. My palms were sweaty, my throat dry. But I knew, with a certainty born of desperation, that I had to go. I was compelled by the need for truth, for Leo's sake, and for my own sanity. The clock ticked relentlessly towards 3 p.m. If you've been gripped by my story so far, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to follow what happens next. The truth is finally about to unravel. At precisely 2:45 p.m., my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, I strapped Leo into his luxurious stroller. My legs felt weak, heavy with a dread that had been building for the past 24 hours. Each step towards Riverside Park was an act of sheer will, a defiance of the fear that screamed at me to turn back, to hide. The sun was bright, the air crisp, a perfect autumn afternoon, which only amplified the surreal nature of my mission. The park was bustling. Children shrieked with laughter on the playground, dogs chased balls across the open fields, and couples strolled hand in hand along the paths. Everything seemed normal, utterly mundane, and yet for me, every shadow held a potential threat, every passerby a possible observer. This normalcy, so starkly contrasted with my internal turmoil, only heightened my nerves. At exactly 3 p.m., I reached our usual bench by the duck pond. The ducks were preening, their iridescent feathers catching the light, oblivious to the drama unfolding beside them. I sat down, positioning Leo's stroller carefully so I could see in all directions, my gaze darting anxiously from face to face in the crowd. Leo, sensing my tension, was unusually quiet, his wide blue eyes fixed on the gentle ripples of the pond. "Mrs. Vance?" A voice, soft and a little hesitant, spoke my name. I spun around, a gasp catching in my throat, my heart leaping into my mouth. Standing behind me was a man, probably in his late 60s, with a shock of neatly combed silver hair and the kindest eyes I had ever seen. He wore a simple, well-maintained jacket and trousers, his posture slightly stooped, radiating an almost gentle air. He wasn't the imposing, dangerous figure I had conjured in my nightmares. He looked, for all intents and purposes, like any other grandfather enjoying an afternoon in the park. "Please don't be afraid," he said, his voice reassuring, though he kept a respectful distance. "My name is Arthur Finch. I'm the one who's been sending the packages. And the money." My mouth felt suddenly dry, my tongue thick. All the questions, all the accusations, all the terror and confusion, condensed into a single, whispered word. "Why?" Arthur offered a small, sad smile. It's a long story, Mrs. Vance. May I sit down?" He gestured towards the empty space on the bench beside me. I hesitated, my instincts still screaming caution, but there was something in his eyes, a genuine vulnerability, a nervousness that mirrored my own. He didn't look like a threat. He looked like a man carrying a heavy burden. I nodded, a silent invitation, and he carefully lowered himself onto the bench, leaving a generous space between us. He took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the ducks, as if gathering his thoughts. "My wife, Beatrice," he began, his voice quiet, tinged with a profound sadness. "She passed away 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. It was quick, but not quick enough to spare her immense suffering. She was everything to me." His voice cracked slightly, and he paused, clearing his throat. "Before she left me," he continued, regaining his composure, "she made me promise something. We had saved our whole lives, had a good retirement fund, a sizable life insurance policy. She didn't want it to just sit there or go to some faceless corporation. Beatrice. She had a heart of gold. She wanted to help families in need, but not through some big charity, you see. She always said those places lose the human touch. She wanted direct help. Real, impactful help. To people who truly deserved it." He looked at me then, his kind eyes holding a depth of sorrow I recognized instantly. After she was gone, I was lost. Utterly, completely lost. The money just sat there, a constant reminder of what I'd lost, and a burden of this promise I didn't know how to fulfill. How do you find families in need without intruding, without making a spectacle? Then, about 6 months ago, I had an idea. I'm a bit of an amateur tech enthusiast, you could say. I set up a system to monitor local area codes, a kind of digital net, if you will, to catch misdialed calls or texts. I figured if someone was desperate enough to make a mistake, to send a message to a wrong number, then they were likely in a difficult spot. It was a long shot. A needle in a haystack. He paused, a flicker of something in his eyes. Relief? Satisfaction? As he finally looked directly at me, and then, your text came through, Mrs. Vance. A simple request for $40 for formula, addressed to a Mrs. Kim. But it landed in my net. I read your words. They weren't just about needing money. They conveyed a raw desperation, yes, but also an overwhelming, fierce love. The love of a grandmother, trying everything for her grandson. And I knew, in that moment, that you were precisely who Beatrice wanted me to find. A warrior woman, fighting alone, for her little prince. I stared at Arthur Finch, his gentle face contradicting the weeks of unnerving surveillance and anonymous gifts. His story, the tragedy of Beatrice, the promise to help others, resonated with a deep, aching sincerity. Yet, a part of me, the part that had felt violated and exposed, still stung. He had investigated me, watched me, taken pictures without my knowledge. He seemed to sense my lingering unease. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice laced with genuine regret. "I truly apologize for the photographs, for watching you. I know it must have been frightening, unsettling. But I had to be sure. Beatrice's wish wasn't just to give money away. It was to find people who genuinely needed help, people who were truly struggling, and who were doing everything they could. I had to make sure the need was real, that the person was worthy." "And what did you find?" I asked, my voice still a little hoarse, but curiosity now overriding fear. Arthur's kind eyes suddenly hardened, not with anger at me, but with a quiet, simmering indignation at the injustice he had witnessed. "What did I find?" "Mrs. Vance. I found a 63-year-old woman working 2 demanding jobs, her body aching with arthritis, struggling to make impossible choices between rent and baby formula. I found a grandmother sacrificing her own health, her own meager comfort, for an abandoned grandchild. I found you, walking through the grocery store with barely enough money for food, then leaving empty-handed because formula for your grandson came first." He paused, his gaze softening again as he met my eyes. "I found a warrior, Mrs. Vance. Just as I texted you." As he spoke, Leo, who had been quietly playing with a colorful ring on his stroller tray, accidentally dropped it. Without a moment's hesitation, Arthur leaned forward, his movements surprisingly agile for a man his age, and picked up the toy. As he handed it back to Leo, his eyes lingered on the baby, a tenderness shining through them that warmed something deep inside me. He wasn't just observing me, he was seeing Leo too. He then shifted back, his expression darkening once more. "And while I was investigating your situation," he continued, "I also looked into your daughter and her partner, Chloe and Marcus. I found records of them posting pictures on social media. Expensive European holidays, lavish dinners, designer clothes, boasting about their new life in Paris." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "While you've been struggling to afford formula, worrying about eviction, they've been living a life of luxury, showing no sign of concern for their son or for you." A hot flush of shame and anger rose within me, coloring my cheeks. Shame that my daughter's abandonment had been so meticulously documented, and anger at Chloe for her blatant disregard, her callous indifference. It solidified the truth I had tried to deny. She didn't care. "Why do you care?" I asked, the words barely a whisper. Arthur's gaze was direct, unwavering. "Because Beatrice would have cared, Eleanor. She believed in the goodness of people, even when life tried to break them. And because I see a lot of her in you. Your strength, your resilience, your quiet determination to protect the innocent. You remind me of her." A long silence stretched between us, broken only by the chirping of birds and the distant laughter of children. I watched the ducks glide gracefully across the pond, trying to process everything. This wasn't a scam. This wasn't a threat. This was compassion from a complete stranger. Finally, I broke the quiet. "What do you want from us, Arthur?" I asked, my voice tinged with a raw vulnerability. "There are always strings, always expectations." His direct gaze met mine, unwavering. "No strings attached, Eleanor. No expectations. Just the opportunity to fulfill Beatrice's wish. I have considerable wealth, more than enough to live comfortably for many lifetimes. And no family, no heirs to speak of. I want to make a difference, as Beatrice wished. To lift the burden from someone truly deserving. Someone like you, who has carried it for too long. He leaned forward slightly, his voice earnest. I hope you won't say no. I want to be part of Leo's life. And yours. As a friend. As a surrogate grandfather to him. As he spoke, he stood up, indicating that our meeting was drawing to a close. But before he left, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick, legal-sized envelope. He handed it to me. There's one more thing you should know, Eleanor. About Chloe and Marcus. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. I hired a private investigator to look into their situation more deeply. The truth is, they're not living a life of luxury. They're living a lie. That business opportunity was a sham. They've been living off credit cards, running up massive debts, burning through what little savings they had. They can't afford to come back. And they certainly can't afford to take Leo. The words hit me like a physical blow, shattering the last fragments of the illusion Chloe had created. It wasn't just irresponsibility. It was complete and utter recklessness. They weren't coming back because they couldn't. The truth was devastating, but in a strange way, it brought a sense of grim clarity. My world, as I knew it, shattered around me, but as I clutched the envelope, looking at Arthur's kind, steady gaze, I realized something profoundly important. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't facing it alone. The thick envelope Arthur had given me became my constant companion for 3 sleepless nights. Under the dim glow of my bedside lamp, I meticulously pored over every document, social media screenshots of Chloe and Marcus laughing over champagne in front of the Eiffel Tower, juxtaposed with bank statements showing dwindling balances and soaring credit card debt, bounced checks, overdue notices for their Parisian apartment, even records of petty pawnshop transactions. The glamorous life they flaunted was a carefully constructed facade, a desperate attempt to maintain an image they couldn't afford. They weren't making a new life in Europe. They were running, plain and simple, from responsibility and the crushing weight of their financial irresponsibility. The betrayal felt even deeper now, laced with a bitter understanding of their cowardice. On the 4th day, the emotional exhaustion finally caught up to me, but also a newfound clarity. Arthur called. His voice gentle. He offered to meet again, perhaps somewhere more private, to discuss everything. Without hesitation, I invited him to my apartment. I needed to talk, to truly understand, to share the burden of this truth. He arrived promptly, not in a black sedan this time, but walking, carrying a small bouquet of cheerful yellow daisies. He seemed less formal, his shoulders not quite as hunched. Beatrice called these honest flowers, he said with a small smile, handing them to me. No pretense, just simple beauty. His thoughtfulness touched a chord deep within me. As I moved to the kitchen to make us some coffee, Leo, who had been crawling around my feet, suddenly spotted Arthur. To my surprise, my usually cautious grandson immediately crawled towards the stranger, reaching up with a gurgle. Arthur knelt, his face lighting up with genuine joy. "Hello there, little prince," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, as he gently took Leo's tiny hand. The sight of them together, an old man and a baby, so naturally connected, brought a lump to my throat. Returning with 2 steaming mugs, I sat opposite Arthur. He still held Leo's hand, his thumb stroking the baby's soft skin. "You know, Eleanor," he began, his voice wistful. "Beatrice and I always wanted children. We tried for years, went through everything. It just never happened for us. We had so much love. Enough love for a house full of kids, we used to say." He looked at Leo, a profound sadness mixed with something akin to wonder in his eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if our love was simply saved, waiting for Leo." My heart skipped a beat at his words. It wasn't just about charity for Arthur. It was about family, about a connection he had longed for. "What exactly are you suggesting, Arthur?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, afraid to voice the hope that was beginning to blossom in my chest. He took a deep breath, his kind eyes meeting mine directly. "I'm suggesting you don't have to be alone in this, Eleanor. Leo needs a grandfather. And I need a purpose. A family to share my life with, to share Beatrice's legacy with. You need someone who sees your strength, who understands the impossible burden you've been carrying, and wants to help you carry the load. Truly, help. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring his gentle face. The sheer weight of his offer, the profound relief it promised, threatened to overwhelm me. Just then, my phone, lying on the table between us, buzzed. Chloe's number flashed on the screen. I froze, my hand hovering. Arthur, seeing my hesitation, gently nudged the phone towards me. "Answer it, Eleanor," he urged softly. "It's time." I took a shaky breath and pressed accept. "Chloe?" Her voice, usually so bright and carefree, was strained, edged with panic. "Mom!" "Oh, thank God you answered. I'm in such a mess. Marcus and we're in real trouble. Everything's gone wrong. We need your help. We need to borrow $3,000, Mom, for our debts, for rent, and for plane tickets for Christmas. Please, Mom, please." The old Chloe, manipulative and desperate, was back. I felt a surge of cold fury, tempered by the stark reality of her situation. "What about Leo?" "Chloe?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "If you're coming home for Christmas, does that mean you're coming for your son?" There was a pregnant pause, a hesitation that spoke volumes. "Well, Mom," she finally said, a forced lightness in her tone. "We were thinking, it might just be best if he stayed put for a while longer. You're doing such a great job, and with our financial difficulties, it's really not ideal for a baby right now. It would be easier, just for a bit." "Easier for you, you mean?" I stated, the words sharp, cutting through her flimsy excuses. Arthur's hand gently touched my shoulder, a silent anchor, a source of unwavering support. Fueled by his presence, by the undeniable truth of Chloe's selfishness, my voice gained strength, conviction. "I know everything, Chloe. I know about your debts, your lies, your glamorous life. I know you're not coming back because you can't afford to. You abandoned your son, Chloe, and you've abandoned me." Her voice rose in a frantic wail. "Mom, no, it's not like that. We're desperate. You have to help us." "No," I said, my voice firm, resolute. "I don't. I am not your safety net anymore. Leo deserves a mother, Chloe, not a fleeting visitor. So here is your ultimatum. You either come home, face your responsibilities, and be his mother. Or you sign over legal guardianship to me, and I will raise him as my own. You decide, Chloe. Do you want to be a mother or a tourist?" Chloe burst into anguished sobs, crying and pleading, but her words held no genuine remorse, only self-pity. "Mom, please, you can't do this to me." "I can," I replied, my voice steady, my heart aching but unyielding. "And I am. Call me back when you've made your decision." I hung up, the silence that followed deafening. A profound sense of liberation washed over me, a feeling of finally taking control. I looked at Arthur, my eyes still wet, but my spirit resolute. He smiled, a gentle warmth in his gaze. "That took immense courage, Eleanor," he said softly, squeezing my shoulder. The apartment fell into a profound silence after I hung up on Chloe, broken only by Leo's happy babbling as he played with a colorful block on the rug. The emotional weight of the confrontation, the finality of my ultimatum, left me breathless. Arthur's hand remained on my shoulder, a steady, comforting presence. He looked out the window, his gaze distant for a moment. "Eleanor," he said, his voice soft. "You don't have to be alone anymore. Neither do I." He turned to face me, his kind eyes reflecting a shared vulnerability, a deep understanding of the loneliness that had settled into both our lives. A small, wry smile touched my lips. "Are you asking me on a date, Arthur Finch?" His face transformed, the shadow of grief lifting to reveal a radiant smile, utterly disarming. "Perhaps," he chuckled. "Though I envision something far more permanent, I'm asking if you'll let me love you both. Leo needs stability. He needs a grandfather. You, Eleanor, you need support. You need someone to lean on. Someone who sees your unwavering strength and wants to help carry the load. Truly carry it. And I need purpose. I need a family. Just at that moment, as if fate itself had choreographed it, Leo, who had been pulling himself up on the coffee table, let go. He took one unsteady step, then another, his arms outstretched, his little legs wobbly but determined. He toddled directly into Arthur's waiting arms, collapsing against him with a triumphant giggle. Arthur gasped, his voice thick with emotion as he held the baby close. Did you see that, Eleanor? His first steps, tears, warm and welcome, streamed down my face. Yes, I replied, the single word encompassing so much more than just Leo's tentative steps. It was a yes to Arthur, to hope, to a future I had never dared to imagine. It was a yes to not being alone. 6 months later, our lives were unrecognizable. Arthur's spacious, warm house, filled with Beatrice's treasured belongings and now Leo's bright toys, had become our home. Leo, at 14 months, was confidently walking, his curious gaze exploring every corner of his new world. He was saying Mama to me, and with even more gusto, Papa to Arthur, a sound that brought a quiet joy to my husband's eyes every single time. The legal guardianship papers were finalized. Chloe, after several more desperate and tearful calls, had signed temporary custody, promising to visit when things stabilized. I didn't hold my breath. Arthur hadn't made a grand gesture of proposal. Instead, one quiet evening, as we sat on the porch swing watching the sunset, he simply held out a small, antique ring. It was his grandmother's, a simple band with a delicate filigree. I found my family. Eleanor, he said, his voice resonating with deep contentment. Will you be my wife? My answer was immediate, heartfelt, and entirely without hesitation. We married in a small courthouse ceremony, with Leo, dressed in a tiny suit that Arthur had insisted on, as our only witness. There were no elaborate vows, no fancy reception, just the quiet solemnity of two souls finding each other, later in life, and forming a family built on love, respect, and shared purpose. We felt, truly, like the happiest family in the world. Later that week, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Kim. So happy for you and Arthur, Eleanor. Your family looks so happy. Come over for dinner sometime, my treat. The neighborhood's whispers of suspicion had long since given way to genuine happiness for us, their curiosity replaced by smiles and waves. One afternoon, Arthur and I sat on the porch, watching Leo chase a monarch butterfly in the garden. Miracles, Eleanor. Arthur mused, his gaze thoughtful. Sometimes a miracle isn't a bolt of lightning or a sudden, dramatic event. Sometimes a miracle is just getting exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. A quiet answer to a desperate prayer. Just as he finished speaking, his phone rang. He excused himself, stepping inside, and returned a few minutes later, a tender smile on his face. My lawyer just called, he said, taking my hand. We talked about making it permanent. For Leo, I'd like to legally adopt him, Eleanor. Give him our name. Make him truly ours. Tears pricked my eyes again, blurring the beautiful garden. The possibility I hadn't even dared to whisper, the dream of giving Leo a true, forever family, was now within reach. Yes, I choked out, my voice thick with emotion. Oh, yes, Arthur, I want that, too. A few days later, Chloe called again. Her voice was different this time, softer, more mature. Mom, she said, a hint of genuine remorse in her tone. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I made so many mistakes. I was scared, selfish. I wasn't ready to be a mother. But I want to be part of Leo's life, if you'll let me. Even if it's just as his aunt. My heart, once hardened, now felt a flicker of hope. Chloe, I said, Arthur and I are adopting Leo. He will be our son, with our name. This is his permanent home. If you want to be in his life, it will be supervised visits. And you need to understand that we are his parents now. You need to respect that. She cried softly on the other end, but this time, her tears felt different. Less self-pitying, more genuine. I understand, Mom, she whispered. He deserves parents who put him first. I wasn't ready before, but I want to try now. For him? Sitting on the porch swing later, with my husband's arm around me and our sleeping son nestled securely in his crib, I felt a profound peace. Hope, like the monarch butterfly Leo had chased, fluttered in my heart for Chloe, for the possibility of growth and healing. Love, I realized, was a choice. It was choosing to show up, to sacrifice, to cherish. And sometimes, the most beautiful love stories weren't about grand passions, but about finding each other when you needed it most, discovering that the greatest victories were the ones shared.